Nicaragua is the poorest country in the mainland Americas, but perhaps no other country in the world today is living further below its potential. In this video, I've packed in as much as I could, some of it depressing, some of it hopeful, and all of it interesting, to show where the country stands today, how it got here, and how much promise its geography still holds. Nicaragua's geography isn't perfect. Its biggest natural challenge is tropical cyclones, especially on the Caribbean coast, where it averages about one per year. These storms often cause flooding, landslides, and crop loss, setting back development by damaging infrastructure. In the west, volcanoes sit close to major cities, putting large populations at risk from eruptions and earthquakes. But geographic disadvantages alone don't determine a country's future. Other nations with comparable natural risks have advanced or at least achieved a higher GDP per capita, largely by building stronger institutions, investing in disaster preparedness, and managing their resources wisely. Take Japan, for example. It deals with even more natural disasters than Nicaragua in many ways, though I'll admit it may be a bit of an outlier. Still, Nicaragua has several geographic advantages that give it strong potential for growth. It has extensive fertile plains, especially in the Pacific lowlands and central highlands, ideal for growing beans, corn, and rice. This has helped the country produce about 90% of the food it consumes, a key factor that keeps it afloat despite widespread poverty. Much of this agriculture success comes from Nicaragua's volcanic belt, with over 20 volcanoes enriching the soil with minerals. These same volcanoes also attract tourists. Beyond farming and tourism, they're also a major source of untapped geothermal energy, offering strong potential for clean, renewable power. Another major asset is Nicaragua's freshwater lakes, especially Lake Nicaragua, the largest in Central America. It supports irrigation, fishing, and transportation, and its location once made it a candidate for an interoceanic canal. Even today, the lake holds potential for sustainable development and regional trade. Nicaragua has rich biodiversity that can be leveraged for ecotourism and scientific research, much like its southern neighbor, Costa Rica. There are bull sharks in Lake Nicaragua, one of the few places in the world where sharks are found in fresh water. The country's eastern lowlands are covered in tropical rainforests and wetlands that host thousands of species, including jaguars, howler monkeys, toucans, and the turquoise-browed motmot, Nicaragua's national bird. Finally, Nicaragua's position between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans give it strategic value for trade and future infrastructure projects, such as the aforementioned canal, which I'll talk more about shortly. So why is the nation struggling, especially given that its neighbors to the south are doing okay, and more recently, so is El Salvador to the north? Ironically, Nicaragua's geographic advantages may have helped cause some of its problems. While its land, resources, and location give it more potential, they also made it more attractive to foreign powers and elites, leading to greater exploitation, instability, and inequality. During the colonial era, Nicaragua developed under a system that heavily favored wealthy elites. Spanish rule concentrated land and power in the hands of a small group, particularly around the conservative city of Granada, where large estates and social hierarchies took root. This pattern of exploitation shaped Nicaragua's future, as landowning elites maintained control well beyond independence. Nicaragua started off rough from the beginning. Deep rivalries between the liberal city of León and the conservative city of Granada divided the country almost immediately after declaring independence from the Central American Federation in 1838. In 1855, the liberals, desperate to win the Civil War, invited a U.S.-American adventurer, doctor, and lawyer named William Walker to help them fight the conservatives. Walker took full advantage of the chaos. After his military success, he declared himself president of Nicaragua, made English the official language, and reinstated slavery, which had been abolished. His regime shocked the region, and a coalition of Central American countries eventually forced him out in 1857. But rather than let Granada, the city where he was based, fall into enemy hands, Walker ordered it to be burned to the ground. His soldiers looted homes, set fire to buildings, and left behind a sign that read, "Aquí fue Granada." Here was Granada. Founded in 1524, Granada is the oldest colonial city in the American mainland that has never been moved. Walker was eventually executed by the Honduran government in 1860, after attempting a similar takeover on Roatan Island. After Walker was forced out, liberal and conservative factions continued battling it out for power. In 1909, the United States helped remove Nicaragua's president, and by 1912 had deployed Marines. The U.S. intervened to protect its interests, including American-owned banks, railroads, mines, and exports like coffee and sugar, and they occupied the country until 1933, backing friendly governments, guarding key infrastructure, and securing exclusive rights to a potential canal route. The idea of building a canal through Nicaragua dates back to the colonial era. The country has two major geographic advantages for building one: the San Juan River, which flows into the Caribbean, and Lake Nicaragua. These waterways could form the backbone of the canal route, significantly reducing the amount of land that would need to be excavated, though both would still require major modifications to handle large ships. In 1849, Cornelius Vanderbilt signed a deal to build the canal, but internal conflict and William Walker's takeover derailed the project. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the U.S. debated whether to build a canal through Nicaragua or take over the abandoned French project in Panama. Many lawmakers favored the Nicaraguan route. It was about 500 miles shorter between New York and San Francisco. In 1902, Mount Pelée erupted on the Caribbean island of Martinique, leaving only 3 survivors out of the 30,000 residents in St. Pierre. Though far from Nicaragua, the disaster sparked fears about volcanic activity in the region. Lobbyists for the Panama route, many with financial interests in the failed French canal, seized the moment, mailing U.S. senators Nicaraguan postage stamps depicting a smoking volcano, to imply the country was too geologically unstable for a canal. Nicaragua does have a dramatic volcanic landscape, but engineers later argued these volcanoes were far from the proposed canal, and that Nicaragua posed no more geological risk than Panama, which also faces earthquakes, landslides, and flooding. It also has a few volcanoes itself. Still, fear and creative lobbying won. The U.S. government chose Panama, and the canal opened in 1914. However, the idea of a Nicaraguan canal didn't die. In 1916, the U.S. secured exclusive rights to build one, but it only served to prevent other countries from doing so. That agreement lasted until 1970. Nearly a century later, in 2013, a Chinese billionaire signed a deal with the Nicaraguan government to build a new canal, but after losing most of his fortune in the 2015 Chinese stock market crash, the project was abandoned before construction began. After the U.S. withdrew in 1933, the head of the National Guard seized power and began a U.S.-backed dictatorship. The regime ruled for over 40 years, until they were overthrown in 1979 by the Sandinista Revolution. Soon after, the U.S. began supporting anti-Sandinista rebels, known as the Contras, intensifying a civil war that lasted through the 1980s. The war killed tens of thousands and displaced communities. Under pressure from regional peace efforts, President Daniel Ortega agreed in 1989 to hold free and fair elections with international supervision. The conflict ended with the 1990 vote, which removed the Sandinistas from power. Violeta Chamorro, a former opposition newspaper editor, was elected president, becoming the first woman to lead Nicaragua. She cut the military in half, helped disband the Contras, offered unconditional amnesty, and launched an aggressive weapons buyback program. Many of the collected weapons were buried in concrete, which you can see today at Plaza de la Paz in central Managua. But in 2007, Ortega was voted back into power. In recent years, Daniel Ortega's government in Nicaragua has become increasingly authoritarian. His regime has jailed or exiled opposition leaders, shut down independent media, and banned political parties. The Catholic Church has faced heavy persecution, with priests arrested and church properties seized. Indigenous communities have also suffered from land grabs and violence, often ignored by the state. Thousands of NGOs and religious organizations have also been shut down. Protests began in 2014 over the canal, which many opposed due to environmental harm and Chinese control. Critics also said Ortega was using the project to stay in power and enrich himself. Tensions grew as his grip tightened, and in 2018, mass protests erupted over social security reforms and broader authoritarianism. They were met with brutal force. Hundreds were killed, including at least 15 during a peaceful Mother's Day march. The U.S. and others responded with sanctions targeting Ortega, his wife, and top officials. In 2021, Ortega was re-elected in a widely criticized vote after eliminating near all opposition. His wife, Rosario Murillo, now serves as co-president, solidifying what many view as a family dictatorship. So what about its neighbors? What makes their situation any different? Well, El Salvador, Honduras, and Panama aren't that different from Nicaragua. Colonial exploitation, civil wars, U.S. interference, etc. But they arguably don't have as many geographic advantages as Nicaragua. That said, El Salvador appears to be turning things around quickly, though there are concerns about human rights and authoritarianism. Panama has benefited greatly from the Panama Canal, especially after taking control in 1999. At one point, the canal accounted for as much as 10 to 15% of the country's GDP. But Panama has since leveraged that revenue to diversify its economy. Today, the canal contributes around 5 to 6% of GDP, as sectors like logistics, finance, and tourism have grown. Costa Rica's geography made it less appealing to colonial and foreign powers, lacking a canal route, having more rugged terrain, and offering fewer easily exploitable resources. As a result, it experienced less foreign interference and internal conflict, allowing for the development of smaller farms and a broader middle class. After disbanding its military in 1948, Costa Rica avoided future power struggles and redirected resources towards education, healthcare, and social programs, laying the foundation for long-term stability. Nicaragua has the natural resources and strategic location to build a brighter future, with rich farmland, geothermal energy, tourism potential, and maybe even a canal someday. But a long history of exploitation and authoritarian rule has left deep scars. Political repression, corruption, and international isolation continue to hold the country back. Frequent natural disasters add another layer of difficulty, damaging infrastructure and setting back progress. Still, with real reform, especially in governance and human rights, Nicaragua could not only recover more quickly from these disasters, but also grow strong enough to better withstand them. And that's all for this video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can purchase one of my maps or posters at mapsandwords.shop. I only have a few dozen designs right now, but I'm regularly uploading new designs, so there may be a lot more by the time you see this video. The most popular is this National Park checklist, and I've also started creating language learning posters, such as this Spanish baseball poster. Again, that's mapsandwords.shop if you'd like to check it out. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.